Every year, no less than 120 Fijians take their own lives. The youngest person ever to commit suicide here in Fiji was only 8 years old. Most of those who kill themselves are 15 to 39 years old, when human beings should be in their prime, and many of these victims are men. Worldwide, close to 800,000 people die by suicide. The main cause is depression, experts say. And these same experts say that as of 2 years ago, more than 30,000 people living in Fiji were living with depression. Good evening. Welcome to Simpson at 8. I am your host, Lice Movono, sitting in for Stanley Simpson. In a 5-year period, over 1,350 people had died by suicide, a figure which puts Fiji amongst the highest in the world. Tonight, we discuss depression as it leads to suicide, and with me is Selina Kuruleca, a psychotherapist, someone whose everyday work is helping to deal with depression. She's widely regarded as the foremost figure in the work to address suicide. Welcome, Selina. Thank you very much for spending the time. Selina, in 2007, you wrote a note called A Note on Recent Trends in Suicide in Fiji. It was really a snapshot of what the situation was at the time. What is it like now? What do the statistics say? Can you tell us about the suicide trends?
Okay. That paper written back in 2007 between Oxia, Foster and myself really looked at, as you pointed out, a snapshot of what was happening across the country in terms of suicide trends. We looked at, and the anecdotal evidence told us there was relationship problems, economic difficulty, disputes within the family and the extended family. There was, I think, the fourth or fifth factor there was poverty. Today, we're still looking at similar trends, again, anecdotal evidence as well as evidence collected through the data collected by the Fiji police force. But one of the new things that is coming up now is the use of violence, or domestic violence has increased. You could say it's part of the relationship problems. Another issue that is coming up now is children are finding it really, really difficult to cope for a variety of reasons. Children aren't able to cope with bullying at school, children aren't able to cope with peer pressure. Children generally don't know what to do with a lot of stuff that's going on.
So there are a lot more young people in the category of victims.
Yes. Here in Fiji, like you rightly pointed out, the youngest is supposedly 8 years old. We would argue that. We can argue that because psychologically we have to look at the competency and the ability of that child to make that decision that I am going to end my life. If competency-wise, so I would question. Is there other motives? Is there other possibilities instead of suicide? So that conversation apart, I think it's extremely important to see what are the trends. So we have relationship problems, we have an increase in the use of violence and people not knowing how to cope with it. There has also been an increase in unemployment,
so this
poverty.
is coming out in the statistics.
In the statistics, the statistics are kept by different organizations. A lot of NGOs keep their own stats. But the statistics that we use when we talk about suicide reflecting Fiji, we talk about the data that has come from the Fiji police force.
Yes, because they really are the only ones who are capturing.
Yes, and it is the official data.
Yes.
Obviously, when there is a completed suicide or a death and it comes to the hospital, then that also goes back into the Fiji Police Force database. But it's also collected at the main hospitals. So trends are still similar.
Is it increasing now? Are there more suicides completed?
We have a lot more attempted suicides. And the suicide in terms of completed suicide, it has been going up and down the past couple of years, but there has been a lot more attempted. Why I want to talk about attempted is when someone has attempted a suicide, they're at a greater
Much higher risk. Yes.
of attempting suicide again and in turn completing it.
it.
So we talk about completed suicide, attempted suicide. The figures have risen over the years, yes, but for a completed suicide, it's up and down. But
pay attention to the attempted
suicide because they continue to rise steadily.
Wow. So the situation has not really improved, has it?
No,
and there are a lot more young people. But what about, is it affecting more men or women?
Okay, globally, Fiji's suicide statistics is consistent with global trend. There will always be more males than females. Two main reasons: males use more fatal means. Males are less likely to talk about issues going on. So there will always be more males than females. Second trend, global trend, and the trend is similar in Fiji, is that the age group is 15 to 29. This is where majority of people have completed a suicide. And like you've rightly pointed out, again, this is when people are supposed to be in their most productive years.
Yes, most productive and happiest and most able to enjoy their lives.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it's also the years where we have the loss of
Is it indicative, you think, of the increase in risk factors?
Risk factors, so you have to look at what are protective factors. Unfortunately, a lot of our young people, if we look at that age group, don't really know what to do.
Yeah.
So we're talking about coping abilities. And a lot of people who are looking after these young people also don't know what to do. So it's almost like we're stuck in a situation where we have two groups of people. One is supposed to be looking after the other, or helping the other out, guiding the other out, the younger one, but
it's not happening.
There's a disconnect happening.
Yeah. But they're all equally facing a lot more pressures than maybe people their age several generations ago.
Absolutely. And you know, when we have these conversations in the forums that we have these conversations in, one of the issues that kept coming up is the use of the internet, the reduced family time and the time to come in Talanoa and have a conversation with family members. Everyone is busy.
What about changes in the family dynamics? I mean,
absolutely.
You know, are they the same as they were generations ago? Do we have the nuclear families? Do we have the extended families? What about that? How does that play into all
the
this?
family? You know, all of these conversations, when you look at mental health, when you look at suicide prevention and education, when you look at what's happening in our schools, it all comes back to the family unit. What type of family units we have? Today, two decades ago, we could talk about the nuclear family. This, culturally, it would be this kind of people. Extended family would be this group of people. Today, we can't say that because we're so enmeshed in so many different cultures. It's irrespective of whether you're Itoke or a Fijian of Indian descent. It is still the same. That everyone is so enmeshed. There's so many people who have trusted their children to be taken care of by other people, and then, which is great because you have that ability to do that, and you trust the people. But then it also has led to a society or a group of people who don't receive that parental care and nurturing that you and I...
That one would think contributes to the protection that they
the protective factors, exactly right.
It's scary though, but you talk about forums and more conversations happening. Has that improved? Are people talking more about depression and other mental health issues now than say the time during which you wrote this trend report?
Yes and no. There are a lot of conversations. Are the conversation outcomes or what we want to get out of the conversations happening? Not really. Why is it not happening? I guess people are not investing enough in mental health. There needs to be a political will to change these conversations, to bring it to the forefront. But we seem to be just like, that's mental health, but it's not supposed to be like that, because without mental health, there is no there is no health without mental health. So there needs to be a lot more conversations as well as outcomes of, when we're having these conversations, that's great, but what are we going to do with these conversations? For example, we've always talked about at length that every media room in Fiji needs to be trained in how you report on suicides. But lo and behold, we only have half of the Fiji media being trained and the other half are disinterested. Do we blame them? It's their gig, But for us, in terms of responsible reporting, this needs to be a requirement of the, the Ethics Council, whatever you want to call it.
So the conversations and the learnings from them is not feeding policy. It's not feeding.
No,
it's not feeding media policy. It's not feeding public policy either.
Not enough. Not enough. Okay. I know that a couple of years ago there was a session held in the Fiji Parliament on mental health, on depression, on suicide prevention. That was at least 5-7 years ago now, and no one's ever talked about it again. I think if we're genuine, I think if we believe we need to be a caring, nurturing, helpful, protective group of people, kind. We need to continue the conversations. Otherwise, we're going to increase, continue to have a lot of domestic violence. We're going to have a lot of bullying. We're going to have an increase in cyberbullying. We're going to have a lot of people thinking that suicide is an option when it is never an option, no matter how hard it gets.
It's really sad. Well, it's been said that our culture of silence does not help. We're not having the conversations that's making the policy changes. We don't discuss our personal situations or our feelings. In the next segment, we'll discuss this. Don't go away. Last year, the Pacific Youth Council said young people face the burden of multiple issues and are ill-equipped to cope. The victims keep getting younger and younger. Selina, why are there more young people facing so much burden and unable to cope with them? What's happening?
I wish I had the magical pill and the answer. From our research, from our conversations, anecdotal evidence, young people are not able to cope as well because they lack the skills, the know-how. They do not know where to go and get help. So where do I go and ask for help? And in situations where help is available, is the help adequate? So there's a whole gamut of things we need to look at. So perhaps if we started in the school system, if I'm 15 years old and I'm in school, where can I go and ask for help? Can I go to my counselor? Can I go to my talatala? Can I go to my HOD, my AP, whatever? And number two, are these people trained? Do they have the skills? A lot of times, young people will only go to the people they trust. And the people that they trust are their peers. Are we equipping our peers with skills to be able to, listen for what, 2 minutes that someone is troubled and go, come us to go to madam, or come us to go to master, or what have you. Or tal. But even our young people, when they hear other people say that they're uncomfortable or something's happening at home, they get uncomfortable.
Too.
It's like someone crying. We don't know what to do when someone is crying.
So
it's okay.
Why aren't our young people talking about this at home? Why do they not see people they trust in their homes?
The first stop, we hope, would always be home. But unfortunately, a lot of this is triggered from home, number one, because no one is at home. And number two, a lot of the difficulties that our young people face is triggered from the events happening in their own house. We discussed very briefly there that the face of the family is very different.
Yes.
So if I do go home, who am I going to talk to? My house girl? And how do I know my house girl not going to go and talk to someone else, etc.? So there's always that inherent fear. And then, of course, with all the exposure to the media, I go online and I want to watch Justin Bieber, and then, he's boring. I want to see Paul Sloan, and and then, okay. So in life, because I'm using my phone all the time, I think this is real, and everything is in real time. It's not. And a lot of young people don't understand that this is entertainment, what they're looking at. When I have to ask for help, I actually have to do the work, I have to go and listen, and I have to trust the person I'm talking to show my vulnerabilities. Even as adults, we don't talk about our vulnerabilities because it means somebody can take advantage of us. So it's a whole host of things that need to change.
But what about in the school system? Are there people that, right now, are there people that young people can trust in school other than their peers?
Yeah. There are some schools that have school counselors. There are some schools that have school chaplains and the deaconess, and I think they really, really need to continue to use these people that they feel the most comfortable with. The use of the counselor, the use of the school chaplain, the use of the deaconess, the use of the father, the brother in the school, irrespective of which faith-based school that they may be. But the young person needs to know that there is someone in my school system that I can go to, that I trust completely, and I also have confidence in their competency and skill set, that they will be able to manage and help me manage my problems, and that it doesn't become discussed at morning tea. So that's the other issue going on for the young people.
Selina, our children are in school for many more hours than they are at home with us sometimes. So Are there people in the school system right now? Are there counselors that who are trained and who are accessible to young people?
The ministry did have some counselors in the schools, then they took that out and they brought them back in a couple of years later, and then they took them out and brought them back in, and now we have divisional mentors. If these people have training or not, I cannot speak to it, because again, counseling in Fiji, that general area, a lot of times it's frowned on, it's looked upon as punitive counseling. You're coming to me to get punished.
Right.
That's not counseling. Counseling is about lending a listening ear, not judging, and just helping the young person, the individual who's come to ask for help, on what is the problem? How do we frame it in a way that, you can look at it in a different set of lens and try and fix it? You need to give responsibility, you need to teach them techniques, strategies, so that the individual leaves your room, if you are doing counseling that is, when the individual leaves your room, they know that I probably need to work on this.
They have some tools.
Yes.
They have some tools they can use to address what they're going through. So the reality is there are no trained counselors in the school system. The ones that do exist involve a trip out of school to go and see them in the local education office.
Some of the mentors do visit the schools. So I know that they're trying, but I think it would be a lot more useful if we see who exists in the school system, who is good.
And train them.
Whether it's the career counselor who becomes, and it needs to be a full-time counselor. It cannot be half the time you're the English teacher and half the time you're the counselor. It can't work that way.
It begs the question then, should we be surprised that mental health or difficulties, the difficulties that you face because of the pressures you're under as a young person, should we be surprised that it's not being discussed more, that mental health is not talked about openly in public conversations the way we discuss our physical health maybe, the way we say, oh, I have the flu, I'm not feeling so well, I have a throat infection.
I think there's still a lot more stigmatization around it, oh, mental health, and then but it doesn't have to be that way. You need to be talking about it like you're talking about reproductive health and physical health. Absolutely right. But people lack the ability and the skills to have these conversations and go, I think I'm really stressed out, and this is what is happening to me because I'm really stressed out. My hair's all white. I can't sleep properly at night. I'm not eating well, what have you, and I get really short-fused. Yeah. People need to be able to talk about that and get the help on,
Because isn't the reality that if we don't discuss this, that it can kill?
Absolutely, absolutely.
In the next segment, we discuss what it feels like to be in that dark place of depression, but also where to find a lifeline. Stay with us. It is safe to say that a lot of our people are troubled and they don't know where to get help for those troubles. In this segment, we talk to Selina, who works daily with people suffering from depression and other mental issues, about what it feels like to be depressed. Selina, tell us, what does it look like? What does it feel like?
We often use the analogy of a black dog. The World Health Organization a couple of years ago put out this video, and the video is called I Have a Black Dog, and its name is depression. What does it feel like? What does it look like? Imagine a black dog. It's really, really black. You can't see it because it comes at you and it envelops you. You are devoid of feelings, so it's neither happiness nor sadness. You just have absolutely no feeling at all. You just go on autopilot and try and get through your day. You don't really care. And this goes on for an extended period of time and in more than one setting. People who are starting to become depressed or think that they may be feeling depressed, there are several criteria that you must fulfill, right? But these are the chief among them. Devoid of feelings. You start self-medicating. You don't want to be around other people, withdraw from activities, and you're just on autopilot. You just do what you need to do to get through the day. Then when you medicate, medication can help with depression. It has helped. Unfortunately, a lot of times when we talk about medication, people don't talk about the other side of the medication. Is that once you feel better, people then start having these ideas, because now I feel better, my mood has stabilized, and they think that they now have the energy. So when we talk about depression, it's very difficult, because a lot of us will have our down days, but it's having that down day all the time, all day, and you just don't know why you have it. Some of us claim that we sleep 10 hours and you get up the next morning, you are still exhausted. It's like you didn't sleep at all. You don't want to go and do the activities that normally bring you a lot of joy, because it's just too hard, man, and I don't have the energy. So depression is really difficult, but people can recover, and people have recovered, but you need the medication and you need talk therapy to be able to walk you through it. And you absolutely need a lot of family support to help you during that difficult time.
What if you don't have the family support?
Yeah. And
what if there aren't very many people around you enough to see that happening?
For those cases of suicides that have been completed, those people who suffer from a mental illness, the mental illness is depression. So there is a direct correlation between suicide and depression. So it's extremely important there that we, if we think we're troubled, this is not the daily pressure kind we're talking about. This is consistent lethargy, consistent lethargy, consistent not wanting to do anything, consistent feeling blue all the time. You're in that space, you need to go and get help, because otherwise you end up being one of these suicide stats that we've been talking about, because there is a direct correlation. You feel an overwhelming sense of uselessness, helplessness, worthlessness. And I don't have anybody. If I'm not here, no one's going to miss me. So, and these ruminating negative thoughts, you keep telling yourself that enough times, you're going to become one of those statistics. And you do not need to be one of those statistics, because help is available. Here in Fiji, it's available at your local hospitals. If you go to the Fiji police, if you have someone in your house who you think is going to hurt themselves, take them to the nearest police station or the police post. So ask the police to come and help, because the police can come and help and transport them to the nearest medical facility. That's part of the training that the police have received. So, there's NGOs, there's Lifeline Fiji, there's Medical Services Pacific, there's Empower Pacific. All of these people do great work, but they can't come to you all the time, because they don't know what your problems are. You need to come and get help. If there is the stigma of, if I go there, then everybody will think I'm Langa, well, at least you're still alive to still continue the conversation about the Langa. But when you're not here, then your children, your family will carry the trauma of what has happened to you. So, we can be helped if you're depressed. There is help out there, and I would just urge people to go and get help, because no one needs to be the black dog. No one needs the black dog in their life. We need to train that black dog, put it on a leash, and control it. That's how you deal with the black dog. You don't let it run, because when it runs, it just swallows you, and we don't want that.
So just taking you back to the very beginning of our conversation, where we discussed the lack of coping tools and the lack of access to help. If you are someone who works with a lot of people, how do you recognize the signs in someone else who is severely depressed or who is depressed?
They're always feeling of worthlessness, helplessness, uselessness.
And would they exhibit this feeling?
They'll talk about it.
How does it manifest itself?
Here, if I had to act it. Oh no, Sarah said, it's okay. No, and no matter in different situations. So, and that part is really important, because some of us act like that at home because we don't want to do the jobs that our parents give us. So we're saying, you people don't like me, very stressed. Like you completely someone else. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about someone who behaves in that manner consistently in more than one setting. Always talking, or an obsession with death and dying. Feeling blue all the time, feeling down. just, you know, you don't know. I've slept for 10 hours. I'm really tired all the time. You need to get that looked at, because maybe you're starting to get depressed. No feelings at all. Yeah. So the birth of a new child usually brings a lot of joy, but you're just sitting there like, oh, okay.
So things that would excite other people or normally
Nothing.
would bring some
A
new
reaction,
form.
an
Yeah.
emotional reaction
It's
of
not
some
coming.
sort. There is no reaction from this person. Emotionally, there's no reaction. Devoid of all sorts of feelings. So no anger, no frustration, no,
And there's something else that you brought up earlier about young people and who they trust. They trust their peers, and their peers may not necessarily be equipped even, you know, to deal with it. So it brings to mind the idea that, you know, are we a society that care for the person we see that's in trouble? And if not, how do we make individual changes to be that person that takes?
As a Fijian, I'm a very proud Fijian. I must say that I think we're a loving, caring people. I think we're very respectful. Most of the time, we're very humble. I also think we can be really silly, and we can be very busybodies. So I would like to challenge us. Could we use some of that to reach out to someone else instead of looking at someone and seeing that there's a problem and going kakase about it somewhere else? That's useless. Adds absolutely no value to anyone's life. So I think inherently we're all good people. We just need to use it. It needs to come out. How does it come out? Look in the mirror when you get up. Look in the mirror right now after this segment. No? Do you want to be the person who helps someone else, or do you want to be the person who brings another person down? I would like for all of us to be the person who will help someone else. And it's small gestures of kindness. It's small gestures of being good to another person. You know, it doesn't have to be a grand scale. We have to go and feed everybody in the market because they're hungry. It doesn't have to be.
It
starts with at home,
out.
in your home, reaching out to your children. It starts in our homes, looking at who's next door and how you can help. It's about, you know, that kid walking on the road and the kid is playing with the other kid and the other kid pushes them over and you're saying, hey, what's up? You know, you're not supposed to do that. I get into a lot of kids from the side I'm living in town. When I see kids swearing on the street, hey, why are you people swearing? You know, so it's just showing, as adults, I think we have a huge responsibility and we need to take that responsibility. And, you know, when someone is not doing something right, you need to speak up. You need to change it, because going to kakase about it to someone else ain't gonna fix it. The problems are here. We need to fix them.
Thank you very much, Selina. It's been a pleasure talking to you. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. If you see trouble or someone who is troubled, reach out and be kind. You have been watching Simpson at 8. Thank you very much for your attention. Join us again next Thursday at 8. Good evening.